Vulnerable refugees who live in the world's largest refugee camp are lured by false promises of fame and fortune. They are promised the world, but most of them only get to see a glimpse of what the world could be, and then they are sent back in the refugee camp. This is based on the reports published by the British newspaper The Sunday Times on October 8, 2023, which revealed the dark side of the fashion industry, the shocking reality of how aspiring models are exploited by some unscrupulous modeling agencies, and this is what we are working with today.
Wait, nini?
Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya is home to over 280,000 refugees, mostly from South Sudan. These young people have survived the traumatic experiences of the physical and psychological violence of war, and they are desperate to create a better life for them and their family. They survived the worst, but they are not safe yet. They dream of an opportunity to reinvent themselves and leave behind the harsh reality of living in a refugee camp, but above all, they dream of living a normal life like the rest of us. However, instead of finding hope, they end up falling victims to predatory modeling agents who prey on their vulnerability, desperation, but above all, their lack of knowledge about the industry. Their sold hopes are flown across the globe, but the majority of them end up in nightmares. These agents promise them glamorous lifestyle, lucrative contracts, and exposure to the international scene. I mean, who wouldn't want that, especially in their field? But it isn't as straightforward as it sounds. In fact, these aspiring top models often find themselves tied in debt. The reports found that some refugees in the camp who had left to work in Europe for weeks and months were later sent back to the camp with debts worth over thousands of euros. One model even said, "I worked hard but I came back with no money. A lot of people think I have money because I went to Europe. I say I have nothing." End quote. This reminds me of people who have managed to convince themselves that if they ever make it to the Western world, they will become rich, while failing to realize that their relatives who have reached the West many years ago have to save and plan for months just to visit them for 2 weeks. It's a topic for another time, but I'll add this. Banks make money and the people at the top of the bank enjoy that money, but the employees of the banks do not. But back to the story. I mean, I wonder how much these aspiring models were paid and how often they worked. So to get some perspective, I decided to reach out to a friend of mine who's a model. She was in the industry, and this is what she said, and I quote, "With the whole modeling industry with East African girls and boys being recruited, is kinda giving the companies that recruit maids to work overseas, such as like Saudi Arabia or so. It's like one of those things they would use, hey, I brought you here, you should be grateful for any pennies that I throw to you, kind of energy. It's kind of one of those things, even if the girl voices out her opinion on how she's being mistreated and how brands are mistreating her as well, she would be blacklisted. It's a plethora of different things and on from different angles. It's much more deeper conversation that needs to be had." End quote. I mean, this is a disturbing situation that needs more attention, considering all the skeletons that came out after the Me Too movement, especially if working for an employer would think because they pay you, they own you and your life. I mean, boundaries can be crossed and will be crossed. The boulevard for exploitation, abuse, and harassment are wide open. So to be fair, there are successful stories. However, the few successful stories cannot overshadow the many stories in the shadow. This situation raises serious questions about the legality and ethics of modeling industry and the protection of the refugee population by the host country and the UN. The report claims that some of the aspiring models are made to sign lengthy contracts in languages they do not even understand. A bit like during colonial times when kings, chiefs, and civilians were made to sign papers giving away their land in languages they did not understand. I mean, how is this even ethical or legal? Now, according to the article, the South Sudanese model, Marie Malek, stated, and I quote, "South Sudanese refugees model are the it girls. And I believe it is due to the fact that the diversity and inclusion movement in the fashion industry has skyrocketed. Demand from people asking for more representation, including it is time for the fashion world to wake up and ask themselves at what cost to young African lives their diversity and inclusion policy are fulfilled. End quote. Marie Malek is setting up a group to support refugees working in the industry called Runways to Freedom. Let's be clear, I'm not suggesting that, these young and beautiful aspiring models should be banned from leaving the camp, from pursuing their dreams, but measures should be put in place to protect them and help them in making informed decisions. But above all, they should be made aware of their rights, responsibilities, and where to find help if they ever need it. And last time I checked, refugees are meant to be protected. How is it possible that someone leaves the camp to go work abroad for the biggest brand in the world for weeks and months and then returns to the camp broke and nobody asks questions? I mean, who is in charge of protecting these refugees if not the host country and the UN who run these camps? They should play a bigger role in ensuring the safety and well-being of these people. They should not let them be preyed upon by unscrupulous modeling agents who only care about making money off their misery. Let's keep scam amongst ourselves. Let's leave vulnerable people out of this mess. If it's your first time interacting with my content, I would like to welcome you and let you know that I have a podcast on YouTube full of non-political stories. You can find it in the podcast sections of the channel. I also have a book of Proverbs which you can access through the link below. Moreover, I create fire content that speaks for itself. Please check out my catalog and thank you for your time.
We, ni nini?